So a couple months ago, Janet Hurley came to me and said, guess what, you get to do a talk on looking back on your career. I was about ready to strangle her and whoever else made me do that. Because,
okay, me
okay. So, I gave some thought to it and just started throwing slides together and rearranging, and this is what I've come up with. So, I kind of started thinking about things that change and the things that have stayed the same. And so, hopefully, this will be kind of fun. There's some neat pictures, probably some faces that, especially you old timers here, will remember. But I had on my bookshelf, I had a really nice list of all the faculty members in the Department of Entomology up until about 1992 or something like that. And this, I figured out from that list that this was the specialist group back in 1989 when I started. And it's kind of interesting if you look at it. This is the person and then the year that they started. So John Thomas, who just passed away a couple of years ago, was the old guy of the group there, although he never looked like it. We had 21 specialists in 1989. And my colleague who just retired last year, Alan Knutson, and I used to talk about it and say, we kind of came on in what was maybe perhaps the golden years of extension entomology, because there were just a lot of people working in entomology there. There were IPM projects that had been going on for a couple of years. A lot of USDA funds had been coming into entomology departments around the country. And it was just a lot of things happening in 1989. And I was just going through this list. We had 7 entomologists, specialists in Bryan College Station. That's as many specialists as we have right now in our group. I believe we have 7 specialists. Is that about right? So another thing you'll notice about this list, not a single female. So that was very typical of our project unit. But we had specialists in Bryan College Station, Vernon, nobody there now, Corpus Christi, Uvalde, Amarillo, Overton. We had 2 in Lubbock still. We had Stephenville, San Angelo, 2 in Dallas, Fort Stockton, and Weslaco. So it was a pretty interesting group. Now this was the list of extension agents, IPM, and program specialists, and there were 18 in 1989. And I think, I highlighted Charles Barr because he was the very first program specialist, as far as I know, in our project unit. Everybody else was extension agents, IPM. So you can see, you guys probably make more out of this than I can. I started putting years in, and I guess I must have gotten tired or something. But today, according to my count, we have, I think, 11 EAs IPM, 6 program specialists, and 6 females. Is that right? We may have more females than that. We must have more. We have 8 females. Well, that's not including Sonia. She's specialist, and Holly. So that's probably about right. So anyway, things have changed. The only thing constant is really change, and that's for sure, because every time we come to one of these meetings, there's new things going on. Some of you may recognize Roy Parker there on the left.
Oh my God, that's Roy Parker.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Elvis.
I'm not sure who the other guy is. His face looks familiar to me. I'm not sure if he was TDA or who, but just got me to thinking that faces have certainly changed. And that's Caitlin on the right. Yeah, that's one of the ones I got off your page, Pat. So, things that change. We don't wear ties much anymore. This used to be standard fare. If you were going to give a talk somewhere, you would wear a tie. And my tie story, I never liked wearing ties, but my tie story was I had put together it was my first program to put together where I was inviting pest control specialists in. And I had a sports coat on, kind of like Robert dresses. I had a sports coat, an open collar, no tie. And Roger Gold came up to me during the program. He said, you know what? Phil Hammond is just hopping mad at you for not wearing a tie. And so he said, look, I'll go out to the car and I'll get a tie for you. And I came back, and he came back, and I put the tie on. And next time I walked by Phil Hammond, who was our boss at the time, he looked at me, and I could just see his face kind of go, what's going on with this guy? I could have sworn he didn't have a tie on before. But anyway, that was H.A. Turney on the left. Some of you may remember H.A. He basically did my job and Alan Knutson's job for 20 years or something like that in Dallas. I'm just curious, show of hands, how many of you know what this is? So that's a spindle that you put notes on while you were out notes. And that's one of my memories of the first few years of working for Extension, is every time you would go into an Extension office, and you go into an Extension agent's desk, he would have one of those and just be stacked full of pink slips, calls that he had to return. And that's a big change. We don't see that anymore. I used to have one of these on my desk, Rolodex. That was my Outlook file for names of people I was supposed to keep track of. So Rolodex has changed to a PDA, to a smartphone. And yesterday somebody used the term slide deck. And I don't know if people really know where that term comes from, but this is a slide deck. This is all the 2x2 slides. This is probably one of the biggest changes and the best changes I think we've had in my 30-year career, is going from having to hand manage slides. And I had a big metal case this tall, and I'd open it up, and I had like 30 trays of slides that I could see. It was really nice. I had a nice light behind it and everything. But every time I'd come back from a talk, I'd have to remember to put the slides back and then take them back out. It was just a major problem. Yeah?
I got a slide projector, an old truck with a carbon monoxide leak that made me pass out. The boss said, "What's a digital camera?" Yeah, that was my start.
Yeah. And so you may remember this, Pat, but we started out doing Verichrome slides, and that was a special film that you had to get. And you would type out, if you wanted a text slide, you would type it out on a piece of paper. Then you get your camera and focus it on the text, take a picture of it, take the film to the developer, and then because it was Verichrome film, it would come back and your black text would be white, and then you'd have a colored background. You could choose what color background to do it. So it was very complicated. Yeah, usually blue, standard blue like this. This was my first slide set that I did using Harvard Graphics, which was a precursor to PowerPoint. And yeah, well, that you could have a slide with two pictures on it and have text on it too was just a huge innovation. And that was really exciting for us to be able to do that.
We didn't have to use rub-on letters.
No more, what do you call those?
I don't know what that is.
Well, you get a sheet of paper with letters that are on there, and then you write over each letter, and it transfers it to the paper. And there's a term for that. I can't even remember what they were called, but just rub-on letters? Okay.
And then you take the picture of that paper and then run it through the diagonal.
Yeah.
That's because everything you print out was dot matrix. That's all the printer wrote.
Yeah. So a hand typewriter was the best way to do that.
Mike, there was a time in between that, though, that we would actually darken the room and figure out there was an exposure time to take pictures right off the computer screen. So you could put it on the screen and just take a picture of it.
And those, of course, the first cameras, digital cameras, were 640 by 480. Not very good resolution. And so this is a 2x2 slide for you young people that don't know what that is. 2 inches by 2 inches plastic in this one, and just a slide that you use in the slide projector. It was a huge innovation. Well, when these came out, we had to do your slide set and then send it as a file to a developer, and then they would print it onto a slide. And it was a huge thing when digital projectors came out, and you didn't have to have a developer. There was a what? Yeah. A lot of work. So this is this is one of my first, this is the first time I put together a slide set for agents, and they could check this out. So this was the two-step fire ant training. And this was very popular for a few years for agents. They would just say, hey, can you send me that slide set? So thank goodness we've gotten beyond that. And when I first started, Alan Knutson and I kind of collaborated, and we did a newsletter together, and it was paper, and we mailed it out to everybody. And of course now that's so changed. Everything's went to email, and now we do websites and blogs. We went from having a personal network to having a social network. So all of these things, I think, have been positive changes. This was about in the year 2000, 2001 or so, but this is our, we had a plant detective video series. So this was being very innovative to do things on video. And we had a calendar. There was a video for every month of the year, and people were supposed to put it in and train their employees with that. We thought that was pretty cool, but it's pretty lame now, it seems like. This is the very first flat screen monitor at the Dallas Center. I was really proud of that monitor, 17-inch monitor. And here's my PDA. I'm kind of discovering these things as I go back through old pictures, but my PDA was, I had that before a phone, or before the phones were smart. And this is, I started thinking about how our outreach to the public has gone since, this is the early 2000s. So this was a big campaign. When we first got fire ant money, there was a lot of money to try to get the word out about controlling fire ants. And we did a Tackle Fire Ants Now and 2 steps to fire ant control. And in Dallas, we had the buses wrapped. So these were early wraps. And now they do wraps everything. But that was kind of a big deal to put advertising on buses. And after we did about 3 or 4 years of campaign about fire ant control, I did a statewide survey. And this was when you could still fairly cheaply do statewide surveys. But we found out that 13%, we did it 2 years, and 13% of people in Texas had heard of the 2-step method. And Bart Dries and I kind of discussed whether that was a good thing or bad thing. Was it amazing that we were able to reach 13% of the people with an understanding what the 2-step name meant? Or was it discouraging because we'd spent all these, thousands of dollars trying to get the word out, and still only 13% knew about it? We could argue about that all day. Today, a good tweet can land thousands of viewers at little to no cost. How many of you have seen this video? It's a pretty cool video. This coyote's, it's like Simba and Pumbaa and Lion King. Here's Simba. He's bringing along this badger, and they're working together. And as this guy says, coyotes and badgers are on the hunt together. Anyway, this got 775,000 likes and 185,000 retweets just from a neat video. So I've been thinking about, what folks are going to have to do, what you guys are going to have to do in the future, I think, to be successful. And we talked a little about this yesterday with Ag Communications, but I think that we need to think about what our niche audiences are, who they are, and we need to target more material toward those niche audiences like Texas gardeners, mothers, homeowners, pesticide applicators, and all these people can be singled out in Facebook and other places, and you can target things specifically for these groups. And I think we need to get better at that. Facebook ads, we talked a little about yesterday. In social networking, they always talk about working with influencers. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but you do have people in your audiences that are influencers that people look up to for advice. And man, if you can work with those people, especially with social media now, I think you can make a bigger impact. Learning to use ephemeral content, video that's probably only going to be popular for a couple weeks, and then it's going to go away, and you just have to learn to work with that. People have short attention spans. We need to figure out how to use e-commerce a little better and bring back some of that income that they were talking about yesterday. I think everybody that's that's new ought to make sure you're trained in how to do a video and how to edit videos, because getting help and working through the system is always slow. And despite what they say about how they got these cool forms online and everything now, it's still going to take more time. And learning how to do basic video editing, I think, is basic job skill nowadays. Use of infographics, I think those can be useful. And this is something I just started to read a little about, called social listening, where you go online and kind of listen to what your clientele are saying online and tweeting about, and learning, maybe getting insights into what they're concerned about right now. Another thing that I've kind of learned is that we need to take more advantage of local governments, and this is probably more true in the big metroplex areas, but some cities have a fairly good-sized budget. And one of my big successes back in the early 2000s was we were working on a campaign to get people to use less diazinon because it was causing water pollution issues in some of the cities. And it was amazing to me that by working with the city of Fort Worth, we could get into one of their utility flyers and reach 200,000-300,000 households. And it didn't cost us anything. We didn't have the kind of budget to do that in extension. For postage for that would have just blown us out of the water. But the cities are already sending these things out to the public. And if we can partner with local government, it can make a big difference. And I kind of have a little insight onto that because my wife works for the city of Plano. This is their environmental education center in Plano. And they have WaterWise, they have monthly newsletters that go out to the entire city of Plano, and I'm aware of how powerful those institutions can be.
Mike, back up a second, because what's really cool about this is they do utilize the master gardeners and the master naturalists to help with this.
Yeah, we're already doing it to some extent, but I think we could do more.
We could do more, yeah.
Another constant, I think, is good leadership. And I think we're going to always need that. This is just a quote that I kind of like, that leadership is the art of giving people a platform for spreading ideas at work. This was Phil Hammond. He was my first project unit head. And Phil was, I think he retired in like 88 or 89. But he was a really great leader and gave us a lot of room to do new things. These are the unit heads I've had in my career. Pat Morrison on the left. To me, I really liked his approach. He said basically his job was to help us to do our jobs. And that always impressed me. Charles Allen, of course, who was head for many years. Chris Sansone, who's now retired, I believe, with Bayer. Tom Fox, who was our IPM coordinator, and some guy over there in the sunglasses. I don't know who that is. But we're always going to need good leaders, and I think everybody who plans to stay around for some time ought to think about what their goals are in terms of eventually going from serving the public to serving a group of entomologists.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
at the risk of maybe saying something I shouldn't, we have in this group excellent leaders. If you go back to that last slide, we had a budget cut in '03. Pat Morrison fired himself. I talked to him, he said, I couldn't bring myself to fire any of you guys. Chris Sansone fired himself in the next budget cut for the same reason. He pretended like he wanted to go to industry, but I talked to him and said, no, I couldn't do that. So yet we have exceptional leaders in this group. And that's part of why I respect this group so much, the quality of our leadership and the people in the group.
Well, I count myself extremely blessed to have had the leaders I've had in my career. And I know how miserable it can be to have a bad boss. And we've just not had any bad bosses in this group. And I think
I'm working on it.
Another constant is wherever entomologists are, there will be beer. And so I was picking up pictures from these retreats from over the years. And I know a lot of these faces will be familiar to you guys. This is the old Junction Function place out in Junction, Texas. We met there for many years, and before we went to more sophisticated lodgings. That was pretty primitive out there. The thing I like the most about this group, I think, is just, we all share similar work and we have similar values, and, it just makes it easy, even though we only see each other once a year, to just have warm feelings for each other and, feel like we're partners together, which we really are.
Wait, does that mean that when we get old, we all have to be balding
These are the guys that thought so hard through their careers that they lost all their hair. But
and was I wrong, or did Dr. Turney, Mr. Turney, whatever he was, always wore his name badge?
I don't remember that, but he certainly is there. That's Glenn Moore's retirement in 2011.
Every time I saw him,
He was the guy that was wearing the tie earlier, too, pointing out fire
And he
ants.
would show up at these junction functions long after retired.
Yeah,
for many years.
yeah, he liked coming back.
He's an expert
Yeah,
photographer.
yeah. So this is T-Bar M. This was 2003. Carlos Bogaran.
yep,
And this is a real I don't know about you extension agents, but to a specialist, this is a great time to get together because this is the only time we get to see everybody in the project unit. And I don't know, I always enjoy these retreats. Although sometimes we look a little bored. This is 2001.
that was one of those signs.
So,
Should we mention Mark for the people who don't know?
Yes, the gentleman.
oh, yeah. Well, this is Alan Knutson, who retired last year, and Mark Meggy passed away about 5 years ago in a car accident driving to the Southwest Branch meeting. So he was a great guy, and really, really miss him. There's faces in these pictures that bring back memories. Paul Nestor's in there. This is 2005. I was looking at these pictures. This was an amazing year. I mean, a lot of the people that I remember, especially from my career, were in this pic. And you can see we're starting to get women in the group. Wizzy and Molly and Kim were here. Yep. And I don't know what it is about Steve Biles, but he always looks the same.
I really
No.
don't change.
You don't see yourself there?
Except for the hair color.
Still got that disgusted look on his face.
And Pat's still wearing the same vest.
Oh, wait a minute. That's not fair.
It's a different shade today.
No.
Armand, did you see the
So for those of you who don't know, I have a severe allergy to insect protein. And so the only way I can carry the shot kit and all the rest is with my fashionable vest. So quit giving me a hard time.
Okay. All right.
Oh, my. You feel like John Jackman.
Yeah.
That's John Jackman up by Whiskey.
Yeah. John Jackman also passed away a heart attack maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was a great guy. There's Stephen again. So this was T-Bar M. This was retiring. There was one room that was hidden that had all the booze, and that's where everybody would end up in the evenings.
Certificate.
And if you want to get the stink eye from Pat Porter, try to take his picture. Same vest.
If you know it doesn't have the best on, we're all worried.
2003, we had the very first Master Gardener Specialist training. If you're not familiar with this, we do a whole week of intensive entomology training for Master Gardeners and Master Naturalists. And it's been a real popular class for them. They really have loved it. Wizzy is kind of taking over administration of that now that I'm retiring, and Robert's involved with it, and Molly. And anybody else that's interested can certainly be involved. And we like to try to rotate the class around the state. Every year we do it in a different location. And I think this year it's going to be in Austin, isn't it? San Antonio, Maui.
I was gonna say, I thought Lizzie did it last year.
But John Jackman was the one that started that class, and it's gone every year since 2003, I think with one year off. And this was the 2009 entomology specialist training. This was another cool thing about our project unit. Back in 1990, J.W. Stewart and our specialist in Uvalde organized this photography retreat. And we went down to this is from Weslaco, and we went down for 4 days and just intensive photography workshop. And that's where we learned how to use flashes. And at the time when we were using old-fashioned slide cameras, we had sticks that you could calibrate, and you could figure out for a certain magnification and distance how far your camera had to be away from the subject to get the proper flash exposure. But this was before all the automatic flashes and everything. But this was, I think, kind of, in my memory anyway, this is kind of the beginning of our project unit becoming really excellent photographers. And there's been a lot of really good photographers in this group over the years.
You had to wait overnight to get the pictures to see how well.
We had a run to the developer, 1 hour developer at the end of the day, and then the next morning we'd get to look at our slides. So, yeah, I've forgotten about that. And just, I don't know, a couple slides about youth because I got to thinking about that. This is Greg Kronholm. Probably has been in our project unit longer than any other human being, but he still haunts things like Insect Expo and Southwest Branch meetings. This is the very first Insect Expo for ESA. It was held in Dallas in 1994. And I was looking at this and thinking, yeah, that's kind of a neat picture. And it brought back a lot of memories because this was in a huge auditorium, and it was like the decibel level that day was like hovered at 100 decibels all day. And one of the loudest events was we had this chitin bowl. We called it the chitin bowl. It's essentially a kids' version of Linnaean games. And we had different groups sign up, and we had heats throughout the day. And I was looking at that and going, you know, those kids. My daughter was in fourth grade at the time. These kids are all 35 years old now. And so those kids have a way of growing up, and those early exposures to insects and the attitudes and feelings that hopefully we shared with kids that day are now influencing voters and adults, full-grown adults that are raising their own kids. So it kind of struck me when I realized how old these kids were right now. So I guess my conclusion on all this was that, we want to look to the future, but we don't want to forget the past. And there's Steve. Man, he keeps coming back like a bad penny. But enjoy your time with each other through these meetings. It's really valuable, and at your end of your career, you're going to look back with a lot of fondness on these times. So that's all I got. Thank you.